Selma, a call to action. If you missed the introduction, I'm Dominique Bannon, anchor with KSLA News 12. Just the other day, I moderated another event for the Louisiana Judicial Council, and we spoke on very similar topics about the grand jury proceedings, the indictment proceedings, black-on-black crime, police interaction. And so it's really, really great that we can continue these healthy discussions. I sat in on the last session, and it was a lot of great information coming out of Preventing Ferguson, Missouri, and Shreveport. Very happy to be here today. Want you to know that KSLA News 12, we're happy to be involved in this, and any chance that we get, Monday will be, Len was on our station yesterday, and Monday, hopefully we can do a wrap-up of how great these interactions are and the healthy discussions coming out of this. I want to get to mention our panel once again and put a face with the names. If you would just wave your hand or you can stand up. First, we have Lloyd Thompson with the NAACP, Quentin Harris with Urban Progressive Network, Kristen Reed, Words Over Lattes. Okay. Ryan Williams, he's a program facilitator with Faith and Fathers, and he's also a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. And Irma Rogers with MLK CDC. And then Sean Bean. Sean is with King's Champs. That's a nonprofit organization for any inner city children. So we'll begin. Did I miss somebody? I did miss someone down there. Okay, we have Brother Marvin Muhammad. He's with the Shreveport Study Group. Thank you all for being here. And we're going to begin right away with these questions because I think these are going to be healthy discussions where we can go ahead and spend the next hour talking about Beyond Selma, Call to Action. What needs to happen for younger people to be recognized by elected officials? So what needs to happen for younger people to be recognized by elected officials? And then I also want to piggyback on that question because it's similar. What needs to be done, or why aren't there young people on boards and elected officials' offices? So why, or how can they be recognized, and why aren't they on boards of elected official offices? Kristen, you want to take that?
I think that one of the things that needs to happen is that we, as young people, generally just need to get more involved, period. When there are things like this going on, we have to make sure that we get involved, we come out, we're meeting the officials, but also the officials need to recognize that young people as well, and that we are here, that we do want to be involved. We are in a new age now. And although I'm not saying that it is correct and this is how it should be, we are in this information age and everybody is on social networks and social media. And unfortunately, we are not in a position where, as we used to, go out and try to figure out about who our officials are, as we should. But they also need to make themselves more visible to us and come to us. One of the things that I'm working on and I'm truly doing is working on getting the young people involved, getting them to vote. At Words Over Lattes, this past election, we got about 300 people registered to vote. And but it's not enough to vote. You have to get out to the polls as well. So we have to play a part in the responsibility of us getting ourselves out there and getting more involved, but it goes both ways.
All right. Anybody else want to take a stab at that? I just want to mention. Go ahead. I was going to mention really quick, we have BTW, Booker T. Washington back there. And so what Kristen is saying is basically, it kind of starts with you all once you turn of age to go and register to vote. So I think one of those questions came from one of the students. So it's very, very important for you all to get out there and vote and be recognized. I think that's what Kristen was saying. And for all of the adults in here as well. Go ahead, Lloyd.
Well, I think that our elected officials have looked out there and seen the need of young folks to get involved. When I came to Shreveport at the age of 26, I was on the front line marching from community to community with Willie Brown for the many of us talking about black-on-black crime. I think our young folks are going to have to grab hold to the rope and say, we want to learn how to do what y'all doing. Nobody said, Lord, you 26 years old, get out here and get started. I made myself available, and I want our young folks to make themselves available. As I look at the NAACP at 50 years old, I'm looking to pass this torch on to someone younger. But first, we got to educate them what the NAACP about. But only when they make themselves available. So I'm all for young folks. I have a daughter working on her master's. In fact, got her master's on her way to med school. So I'm all for young folks. But I want them to make themselves available. I'm available, whatever I can do, to make sure that our young folks become the leaders of tomorrow. I'm for that. So whatever we need to do, as an adult at 50 years old, I'm ready to make sure our young folks take the reign and continue to do the things we need to do to make our community a better place. So I'm all for that.
So Lloyd, I know that I've emceed your gala many times. Just a question here. How many young individuals, young students or folks are part of the NAACP, just maybe a percentage, and how many folks come to you, as you were saying, to get involved?
Well, we got about a total of about 200-some young folks that's members of the NAACP. But very sudden, I have a young person come up and say, I really want to get involved. I want the young folks to come to me and tell me what their issues is. Let's have a dialogue. Let's have a meeting on what your issues is. So when I stand up with you, I will know your issues, and you can be out front. I don't have a problem being in the back. I've always said a good leader can stand in the back and still make sure his troops going the right way. So if the young folks have any issues, come to the NAACP. I stand with you. I stand behind you. I do whatever we can, because I believe unless we get y'all ready to take over, we are doomed to have a seven repeat in Shreveport, because nobody is preparing our leaders and our young folks. It's time for y'all to step up.
All right, I think Ryan Williams was next with Faith and Fathers, and then we'll get to you, Ms. Rogers.
One of the things that I wanted to touch on was direct community involvement. It's not a one-person issue, it's an everybody issue. It takes the entire community to actually raise a child, and I think we've gotten away from the concept of that. I think that the responsibility is not just in the household, it's the household, it's the community, it's the school, it's the atmosphere that the child is raised in. When you look at something about community leaders and community development, me, myself, personally, I grew up on the MLK Cooper Road area, and I grew up seeing Johnny Vance and wanting to replicate him and replicate what he was doing inside the community, and also seeing the Hersey Wilsons and the people of my neighborhood, and wanting to grow up and wanting to mimic that change. When I enlisted into the Air Force, and they told me, they say, listen, you can go anywhere you want to go, you can go anywhere. What's your home record? Where do you want to go? I said, I want to go home. If you want to change something about your area, you have to change some things about yourself. And that was one of the things that I wanted to do, was come back to my community, bring some change, bring some different ideas, reinvest into my community. And that's one of the biggest things that I've seen inside the city of Shreveport, is that we don't invest inside of our communities, whether it be the school, whether it be the neighborhood itself, supporting black on black business, making sure that things are taken care of in a proper and nurturing way. Those are some of the things that can be discussed. And when you talk about leadership, you stand around and you say, who are the leaders? Are the leaders being exposed? Are the leaders being put into the forefront? Are they at the schools? Are they in the communities? Are they doing the things that they need to be doing? So you also have to hold yourself accountable as a leader, and also as a constituent, to make sure that the leaders are living up to their expectations.
All right. Ms. Rogers, and then Brother Muhammad.
I think it's a multifaceted question, because you're talking about leadership, you're talking about the young people, and you're talking about involvement. Leadership demands some training. So as Laura was saying, and as the young man just finished, Brian, if you have to have an interaction with our young people in order to accomplish this, you invite them to your meetings, you do some things that they can do. We get a lot of young people participation. The Great American Cleanup is coming up next month. Well, in April, actually. And we involve the football team from Green Oaks and the ROTC. We involved a lot of those children with the adults. So we had an intergenerational team. And we do a little training, and we support a lot of youth. When I say we, the Martin Luther King Community Development Corporation. We put money into the summer camps that the SPD, the Shreveport Police Department, runs every summer. We do community forums in the MLK area, and we target our children. We target them so that they will know someone who cares about them. And when we write grants, we buy uniforms. We spend over $4,000 between August and December on school uniforms for children who are in Title I schools. Can't do it for everyone, but the underserved. But you try to establish a dialogue, let them know that you care, get them into some of your meetings, the ones who really aspire, and then do some training. Once you get some training going, then I feel our young people will know what to do. If they sit there with you and find out what you are doing, and they watch, and you train, then when you're sick or you're not there, someone needs to know what to do. Our second VP is a young man that's an Omega, a second vice president of MLK CDC. I feel like if something happens to me, Dr. Marlon Henderson can step in because he's been there about 6 or 7 years now. And he's been working with us. He knows what we do with the grants. He knows our annual events, all of those kinds of things. For the leadership in terms of elected officials, making and bringing more successful companies, corporations that pay higher salaries. I have 3 children. 2 of them live in Dallas because they could get a higher salary. So our economic base has to be improved. There are some good fields around here, primarily in the medical field, but you need improvement across the board so that they feel they can earn the same dollar here in Shreveport.
Brother Muhammad?
Yes, I think to a large extent we have failed to pass on the struggle of the recent history to our young people. Our young people will learn anything that we put in front of them, but we have failed to cultivate these young minds. You know, it's interesting that this is Black History Month, and the founder of Black History Month, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, he wrote this very illuminating book, The Miseducation of the Negro. And he says in one chapter, he said, one of the most striking evidences of the failure of higher education among Negroes is their estrangement from the masses, the very people upon whom they must eventually count for carrying out a program of progress. So Dr. Woodson put in his life's work. He compiled his life work in this edition, The Miseducation of the Negro. And he said that higher education, those of us who say we have quote unquote made it, we become estranged from our own masses of our people, especially the young people. So oftentimes when you talk to young people today as we do, when you find that many of them don't even know what the NAACP is all about. Many of them don't even know anything about Martin Luther King. We took some young people to see Selma, and we literally saw tears coming out of their eyes because they are looking at their history. They're looking at what we had to go through. But many times because we've separated ourselves from that part of our struggle, our young people are void of political ideology, civil rights ideology. So they're growing up, and we are allowing this to happen. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Bean.
I'm going to agree with my colleagues up here on the panel, but I'm going to say there needs to be more dialogue, more conversation. There is a huge gap between the generations. I know from, when my generation and the ones before me, I wouldn't know how to address you. I wouldn't know how to come up and actually speak to you on what you're doing, and you wouldn't know how to address me or to bring me into it. So there needs to be a dialogue both ways. Both parties, both generations have tremendous things to offer. The new, especially with technology, it's amazing how you can have the world at your fingertips. And then with all of the wisdom from the older generation, it needs to be given and shared with the younger generation so they will understand, so we will understand how to lead. To be expected to lead, and I don't know how to, you're headed for disaster. I'm a teacher, along with having an organization, King's Champs. I'm a 4th grade teacher, and the children Once they understand that you care for them, once they understand that, yeah, you're gonna have discipline, you're gonna have structure, but you actually care for them and that you love them, they'll be willing to do whatever that you will have them to do because they trust you. And if there is no trust, like the gap, what I was just mentioning, if there's no trust, then I feel like you don't understand me, and you're feeling like I don't want to understand you. So just more dialogue and more trust.
All right. Thank you, Sean. We'll move on to the next question, and this is coming in at, what would you say to the person who doesn't vote because they think their vote doesn't count? And I know I'm not on the panel, but from a journalist standpoint, this past election, there were at least 3 big elections that we could not call. Most times, a lot of times, news stations will call that election and say who the winner is. It was just too close. And if you think your vote does not count, you can ask Councilman Willie Bradford, who was in a runoff. It was so close that it went into a runoff, and we saw many races go into a runoff. And so your vote definitely counts, almost down to, 1 vote if it's 2 people to call that race. And we'll begin with anybody on the panel that wants to take a stab at that. Go ahead, Quinn.
I think it's extremely important, especially here on the local level. I will say, maybe 5 years ago, I felt like that. I saw so many injustices happening on the national level. You can actually lose an election and still win. I felt like it was almost purposeless for me to walk out there and cast a vote that didn't matter. But I was instructed that the only way they make it to a national level is if they're first elected at the local level. So I think it's extremely important for us to go out and vote on our local level to make sure our local leaders are actually in a position to do the good that they say that they're going to do and hold them accountable for it. We have, and I don't know all the elected officials here, but I know we have elected officials that are constantly being voted in, and I don't know if it's an official job or effective job that's being done based on names. So when you vote, I believe that vote should count towards a common goal that we all need, a common dream that we all want to see come to fruition, and hold these elected officials accountable. But like you say, Ms. Bennett, if we don't go out, the same people that you're complaining about because our roads and all these things are not, our school system, all the things are not effective like we want to. If we don't take the initiative to go out and vote and make a change, things will never change in society.
Lloyd, does the vote really count?
We at the NAACP believe that vote counts so much, we provide free transportation to the poll. We run a year-round voter registration drive at 13, 15 miles, 5 days a week. Voting is so important that if you feel your elected officials not doing what they're supposed to do, every 4 years you have a chance to tell them how you feel. We have got to get back to teaching our young folks the importance of going to vote. Nothing is going to change if you do not go and vote. So I'm committed to the NAACP and personally doing everything I can, not only to teach folks about voting, but getting folks ready to vote and then give them a free ride to vote. We as a community owe it to our young folks to get them ready to make a change in their community. And the only way they can do that is to cast their vote.
Thank you, Lloyd. Ryan?
This to the young people. If you want to know how important voting really is, look at your surroundings. Look at your neighborhoods. Look at the things that you don't have versus the things that are being projected on the other side of town. If you want to, think about your vote, look at your school, look at your area, look at the things that are really, deteriorating around you. Think about the elected officials. Think about the people that are in the position to make these changes. The last two people, the people that spoke before me, they talked about accountability. Where is the accountability? How are we holding our elected officials accountable to our neighborhoods and to our areas, to our demographics? Is the right thing being done? There are a lot of questions that need to be asked besides, the voting, are people voting, where's the votes coming from? It goes so far past the vote. The work doesn't start before you're elected. It starts as soon as you're elected, and it goes forth and it moves forth and it continues to go forth. And hopefully, somehow, some way that we can encourage our young people to start voting and let them know that, you know what, the vote itself, it's a privilege. You know, it is a privilege to actually go to the polls and vote.
Thank you, Ryan. Brother Muhammad?
Yes, voting is very important. Our ancestors paid a dear price so that we could vote. But you've heard from politicians today. I listened very carefully to Councilman Willie Bradford and Calvin Young and the report that brother just gave, Calvin Young just gave, of the disparity. And as Councilman Bradford stated, we have more elected officials than we've ever had in our history. And with a black mayor. Look at the state of Shreveport. Brother Calvin gave a dismal report. So, voting. Yes, I vote to change a corrupt system, because politics without economics is symbol without substance. And many times, what, as brother just mentioned, many times when we send our elected officials down there, we're not backing them with anything, so they become pawns for special interest groups. So special interest comes and then offer them what they are there for, money, and to represent us. But since we're not backing them, then special interests, lobbyists. So what we are getting is special interest representation, and this is why we don't see the results after we vote that we are looking for. And so we keep changing personalities and we keep changing the face of the politician, but the system stays the same and nothing else changes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Brother Muhammad, I want you to go ahead and piggyback off of this next question, because I think you mentioned something. How can we change a system that is set up against us? And the journalist in me also wants to give you the other side of it and say, is the system set up against us?
Yes, ma'am. According to this book, once again, and I brought it because it's Black History Month. And this is the author of Black History Month. So we have, this book really needs to be in every black school in America. Yes, the system is set up against us. And all we have to do is go back. How many remember Black Wall Street, or have read the book Black Wall Street? Now, under segregation, when we were forced to do for self, because under segregation in the 1920s, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, black people built what is called Black Wall Street. We built hospitals, we built supermarkets, we built factories, theaters, banks. We built an infrastructure right here inside of America. You can Google it and read it for yourself. We had multimillionaires. We had people that owned their own airplanes in the 1920s. What happened to that? See, under segregation, we were forced, since we couldn't go into the white man's hotel, we had to build our hotel. So we are at a point of survival again, to where the Chinese are not protesting. We don't see the Chinese out there protesting nothing, but they got Chinatown. They have their separate identity. They have their separate culture inside of America. Even though they are Chinese Americans, they have their own separate community that deal with their needs. Why can't we? We have all of these qualified, brilliant minds in this room. Lynn Carthon has assembled a beautiful staff of the state of Black Shreveport. We got to start thinking about how to cultivate these young minds into doing for self. And that'll change the system.
Thank you, Brother Muhammad.
Well,
Ryan?
it goes into a quote that I read. It said, a system cannot protect those that it was not set up for. So if you think about a system and what a system is, and if the system was not designed for you, then it's not going to be able to protect you. But what are you going to do about it? Are you going to stand up and liberate that system? Or are you going to be man and woman enough to stand up and say, this is not right? Because oftentimes we see things and we don't say, hey, listen, this is wrong. We let it pass by. We become passive to it. We begin to sit there and let it predicate, and then it becomes a problem, and then it's too late. It's too late when a young man is laying face down in the middle of the street after being shot several times. It's too late when it gets to that point. But what did we do before? What kind of changes did we make beforehand? So you look at the system, and the system is not set up for you. But one thing that I can say, at some point in time, if you don't respect the system will make you respect it. So you have to understand it. The best thing that we can do is provide knowledge, give knowledge. And Brother Muhammad made an excellent point when he said we have to cultivate these young minds. When you're thinking about young people and what they have to offer, you have to think that it's far more important to save children than to deal with broken men. You've got to understand that. You've got to deal with that. We have a bunch of young people here in the city of Shreveport, and if you don't know it or not, Shreveport is, if I'm not mistaken, is number one from sending young men from high school to jail faster than anywhere else in the country. If you don't know these stats and you don't understand these facts and you're not reading these things, then it's too late. It's too late if you're not reading these. We have to step up to the plate. We have to start encouraging these young men and these young women in order to be the leaders. Mr. Thompson said, he made a great point. He said, who's going to take his spot? I'm looking at Mr. Cawthorn. I'm looking at him. I'm also looking at Mr. Bradford. I'm looking like, who's going to take that spot? Who's next? Who's stepping up to the plate? And you have to think about these things. You have to see these things. You have to realize these things. You have to look at it and say, what is going on? What changes can we make? How are we going to step up to the plate?
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Harris?
I actually had this conversation just last night with the gentleman. Is it corrupt? Yeah. Is racism going anywhere? No. Are we set up to fail? Yes. But if you want to take that excuse, go ahead. I'm the chairman of Urban Progressive here, and a part of our group, Ms. Kamisha West is here, manager of Walmart. Tanita Baker, extremely successful engineer. Sylvester Marshall, pharmaceutical sales. Myself, I'm in the financial services business. So is the red tape there? Without a doubt. Jonathan Reynolds, Sherelle Jefferson, branch manager of Regions Bank. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Are there excuses for us not to make it? Without a doubt. But that should not stop you from where you're headed. Is it important to recognize that the issue's there? No question. There's not a question about that we have to face reality. But in my opinion, that should be a one-sentence line. The system is corrupt, period. And the rest of the page should be filled with an implementation process of how you overcome that system so we can bring about that change.
How do we overcome it?
Education. He mentioned earlier about the young folks not necessarily coming out, or I want to tell you, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. So all we can do is progress with the knowledge that's been given to us. If whatever you want to be in life, education is going to be something that trumps all of it. If you want to be in the pharmaceutical sales business, your time needs to be devoted of making you the best pharmaceutical sales rep that you can possibly be. One thing I've learned, especially in my business, in the financial services business, I have to be 4 or 5 times better just to be on the same playing field. So when others are sleeping, you have to be working. When others are playing, you have to be reading. You have to study. So I think education is the biggest piece that's going to take us to that next level. And we need guys like you to reach back down and guide us and help us. We need gentlemen like this to reach down and guide us and help us with things that we don't necessarily know. One thing that struck, this is a little bit off subject, one thing that struck home to me, you talked about the slides of the demographics as far as the economic gap here in Shreveport, correct? I can't tell you, from our people and other people, I deal with life insurance every day, okay? We have $10,000, $20,000, $25,000 policies. The other side, $500,000, million, 1.5 million, 2 million. So when dad passes away, I pass down $1 million. Instantly, that generation has an increase in finances. With us, we're taking care of a funeral, and there's nothing left for the family. Well, we have $100,000, and that $100,000 lasts 2 years, and we're back in the same position we were in before that person passed away. So, education financially, education as far as career, education spiritually, those three things we will not ever progress if they don't change.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Ms. Rogers.
I agree with a lot of it in terms of education, and there has been a setup for failure. I'm a 33-year veteran of the Caddo Parish School Board, and I saw years and years ago when I was working at Central Elementary, West Shreveport, several other schools. I worked at more than 10 different schools. And the setup was that testing now has almost overtaken the points of teaching our children. When I grew up, and I realize this is a long time ago, but my teachers were able to teach me about the Jim Crow laws and the things that hurt us so badly and why voting was so important. My parents taught me and my teachers taught me. You don't have a lot of that time with the structured setup that's in the classroom today. And that's why in our organization, we put a lot of funds into the schools. Right now, we're setting up for tutoring. We go in and do tutoring prior to them taking the test. And basically, it's test-taking skills. And those are things that we found years and years ago that are missing from our children. But it's incumbent upon us to understand it and meet the needs. Now, with the voting, most of you in here, almost everyone in here should understand, we now have a black president. Why? Look at what happened. Look at the structure of running those campaigns, of dealing with grassroots, attacking it from all sides, and basically the new technology. President Obama reached out on the computer, on the cell phones, internet, met young people where they were. We have to do that. That's part of the training. We have to meet our young people where they are, and then we can lead them on. But the young people here, I'm talking to you, BTW Band, I'm talking to you from Green Oaks, and all of our young people, understand one thing. What happens in Baton Rouge affects you. The leaders that you vote to send down there, that's what makes your school what it is. Having to do all the testing, that comes from the Bessie Board and the State Department of Education. So when it looks like a setup for failure, we who've seen it, we sit down, we try to explain it, we have to attack it, we have to go out, we have to gather the grassroots and try to elect the officials that will help our children to learn. Education is the foundation. I do believe in that.
Mrs. Rogers, you mentioned something, and being a former educator, do you believe that there's not enough teaching of African American history or black history? And I mentioned that because we had a story last night. There was a teacher in a different state who was pushing for African American studies to be in U.S. history into those school books. It's been a while since I was in high school, and I know that I learned it very briefly, probably during African American Black History Month. But do you think it should be incorporated into the U.S. History Manual?
I think very much so, because this country was built on the backs of black people. Slavery built this country. If you look around at everything, the cotton gin, everything else that was here in the South, look at the ships, look at the red lights, look at all the things that we learned about black people, black men and women invented. So why are we disproportionately disallowing that from our history? We are part of it. We are a part of this history. Yes, it should be incorporated. If it were, we wouldn't have to teach them about Selma. They would already know the story.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. And I believe Kristen wanted to answer the question regarding, is the system set up against us?
I think in order to affect a system that we think is quote-unquote set up against us, one of the first things that we as young people have to do is get away from the mentality that this is just what it is and accept that. we have to stop sitting back and waiting for someone to be a leader and for someone to give us instruction on what it is that we're supposed to do or how we're supposed to move in the system that is already set up against us. We have to stop making it to where our kids have to look back in a history book in order to get an example of what a leader is. And we have to step up and be willing to make the sacrifice that Malcolm made, that Marvin made, and that Angela Davis made, and be willing to step out and say that I'm not okay with the way that the system is, and I'm going to be the one to be a part of affecting the change rather than just sitting there and accepting things for what it is. Too often I've talked to other young people in my generation, and one of the reasons that they don't vote or whatever the case may be is because they say this is how it is, so it just is what it is and we can't change it.
Voter apathy, right?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Kristen. I'm going to take this last...
Let me say something before.
Okay.
We as black folks have got to stop celebrating being black 28 days. We are black 365 days a year. And we need to act like we black and stop apologizing for being black and stand up and do something for ourselves.
Thank you, Lloyd. Sean, you are a fourth grade teacher, so I don't know how much you can speak to this by being currently employed by the school board, but tell us what you can. And then we'll take some questions from the audience.
Okay. As we were saying, education is very important on changing the system. You have to educate yourself in the system, learn the rules of engagement, and perfect them. If you're going to buck the system, then they have rules for that. So why go against the grain when you can learn it? You're very brilliant. You can learn the system, and you can move up, and you can make change. But something else that's very important, though, is unity. See, I remember taking a village to raise a child. I remember walking down the street doing something I had no business, getting disciplined by that person that called me, going down, and since mom was at work, the person that was watching me disciplining me, and then when mom got home, her taking care of me. That's 3 times I got in trouble for that, so I knew not to do that again. But we don't have that anymore. It's all about me and mine. That's an issue. See, we can't have a Black Wall Street. We can't have the marches and these great leaders that we have here in Shreveport that were major players in civil rights. That it's here in Shreveport, but we can't have that if we're only thinking about ourselves. If it's only about mine, how I'm going to advance, not about when I move up, when I get further educated. Not just talking about in school, because if you're only educated, a child or a grown person, if you're only educated in school, you're uneducated. It's real simple. It's real simple. But once I come out of that situation and I only think about myself, I move out the hood, as we call it. But I don't go back and invest, like was mentioned up here. If I don't reinvest in my neighborhood, let's call it what it really is, in my community. If I don't have black businesses, we don't support black businesses because we think Mr. Charlie's ice is colder. If we don't understand what we're doing, if we don't support each other, there will be no change.
All right, thank you, Mr. Green. We're going to start taking some questions from the audience. If you will come to the microphone, and we'll pose those questions to the panel.
All right, come on to the microphone, gonna line up. Let me just say something very quickly. And I was glad that a lot of these young people came out to be a part of this State of Black Shreveport, even as vendors and as panelists. But I want to do a challenge to the young people. A lot of what we've been talking about today is a little bit more esoteric, meaning that it's up there in the skies, but it's not specific. If you want to change the makeup of the city council in Shreveport, you want to change the state representative makeup in Shreveport, Louisiana, you're only about 400 to 500 votes away in any election. So I'm going to challenge these young people that the next election, you want to see somebody gone, tell y'all get together, and y'all be responsible for bringing 35 people to the polls, and that change you're talking about is going to be there. But looking at it esoterically, we don't do this, and we need unity and all that. Those are esoteric items, and they're true, but you got to drill down on this stuff. You're only about 400 or 500 votes away. Y'all make a challenge to that. You won't have to worry about people looking for you. They'll be calling you.
Challenge accepted.
And for the students out there, trust me, I just had a baby, and I don't necessarily want to carry 17 pounds with the carrier into the voting booth. But in order to make a difference and for my vote to count and for me to have a voice, I had to do that. And I did it twice this time when we had the runoff election as well as the regular election. Ms. Rogers pointed out that we have Green Oaks here too. Thank you so much for being here. I did mention that we have Booker T. Any other high schools here that I definitely need to recognize? Booker T, Green Oaks? Okay, thank you so much. Give us your name, sir, and then your question.
My name is Sylvester Marshall. I want to thank Mr. Lynn again this year for letting me be his assistant with putting the State of Black Shreveport together. And also, when I told him I wanted to do a youth panel with some youth leaders and some of my friends and some people I see moving around in the community, I want to thank him for letting me be able to put the panel together and get them up here so our voices can be heard. My question and how we kind of came about putting the panel together was kind of like what the panel actually touched on, accountability. And also Mr. Lloyd talked about as far as passing a torch. Just talking to a lot of my friends, like me and Sean went to Justin together, we went to Northwestern together. I've been knowing him since the playground. We grew up together. So growing up together and growing up in Shreveport, and you guys talk about passing a torch, I don't mean to upset anybody by the comments that I make, but it's now it's kind of turned into a blame game. It's kind of turned into whose fault is it? Like Brother Muhammad said, we had the Black Wall Street, we had thriving businesses. Who dropped the ball? Who dropped the torch? Sometimes it's like we're trying to pass something on to you guys, but a lot of times what you're trying to pass on, we don't even want. You know, it's like, what are you passing? You're passing me Shreveport, but what productive is going on in Shreveport? You had it before us. So it's not like you're handing us a pot of gold. It takes both of us to be able to work together to kind of find out what generation dropped the ball. Where did this disproportion come from? Where did all this come from? And the blame is getting passed on. Oh, young people don't vote. Young people don't do this. Who was supposed to instill that in us to vote? Who was supposed to instill that in us to be active in our community? Who was supposed to push education in us? They talk about old kids having babies, no fathers in the home. Who was in the home with us to show us what father figures are? A lot of us, all we had was Bill Cosby. And now they're trying to knock Bill Cosby down. So, I mean, with that being said, it's a lot of blame game. Oh, they're not qualified to do this. They're not qualified to do that. But when we had leaders that were dropouts in 7th grade, now you have leaders that have multiple doctorate degrees. So, I mean, it's always a knock against the younger generation for what we don't do, but what was shown to us to do.
I think Ryan wants to speak to that. Ryan with Faith in Fathers.
That was excellent. That was perfect. Because one thing we got to do, I mean, we're blaming each other. Or it's this group's fault, and it's that group's fault. This person didn't do this, and that person didn't do this. But at what point do we come together and we point at each other and say this? We look at each other and we say, you know what? We've got two coming. We've came a long way, but we went the wrong way. At what point do we start saying that and we start saying, you know what? I'm going to make the difference. I'm going to be the change that I want to see inside of my community. This is the difference that I'm going to make. When I moved back here in 2011, I wanted to mentor. And looked all around the city of Shreveport. What do I mentor in? Where do I go? What do I do? How do I start this? What's going on? And I couldn't get any assistance on it. I ended up starting the Bossier City Capital League. And I can honestly tell you that we are the only program in the city of Shreveport that has a 100% graduation rate, 100% college acceptance rate, average score of a 22 on the ACT, and a 3.2 GPA. And as far as doing that, and as far as mentoring, it can be done over the city of Shreveport. We have to start reaching out to our young adults. We have to start stepping up to the plate. And I know I've said this several times, and encouraging our young leaders, and not pushing them down, but encouraging them, showing them the path, pulling them to the side. Being a teacher, passing that tutelage along, saying, you know what, young brother, come here. Let me show you something. Let me teach you something. And when I say, like I said, I moved home and I searched for that. And I can say this to Ms. Rogers. Anytime I've ever stepped up to her business or to her door, she's always extended that hand to me. And I would like to thank her for that personally in front of everybody. So thank you, Ms. Rogers.
Thank you, Ryan. Ma'am, your name and your question.
My name is Dorothy Lewis. And I don't have a question. I have two statements that I would like to make. Whether I step on toes, that's fine with me, or whether it's not. I'm just going to tell it like it is.
That's right.
Two things that's really concerning me. This is 2015. There's programs in place to help the young people get their GED. I'm so tired of every time things get set up in place to help these kids. Stop stepping on the ones of what they haven't done or what they're not doing. Pick them up and help them to go forward so they can do. The programs, the grants that's in place for to help them get the GED, help them get the GED so they can get jobs. They can't get into the system without a GED. There's a lot of them out there wanting. They have a program set up at Goodwill right now to help them get GED. The teachers are not doing like they're supposed to do. Stop taking the money and using it for your purpose. And I got a little click over here that I'm helping. The little click over here don't matter. Help everybody. It's time out for that. There's no reason for our city to be back where it is because the money is here. And another thing, the teachers that graduate and get their master's degrees from another state, it's wrong for them to have to take all these tests just because their master didn't come from Louisiana. That's discriminating. That's what's running all our young teachers away to other states. We're building all these new fine schools, but if something don't get put in place to stop all these testing, these kids have gone through college and spent all this money, whether it was in Alabama, Mississippi, or wherever. They have the master's degrees. They should go ahead and give them their license and let them go to work. They're qualified. And stop giving them all these tests. Oh, you got to pass 7 tests before you can get your license. That's back in the 20s. That's back in the 19s. This is 2015. All this should be done away with. And we have leaders in place to do it, but they've got their cliques that they're working with, and if you're not in the clique with them, they don't matter. This needs to be stopped. The problem with our black community, we do not help each other. We do not stick together and help all of them. Stop badgering our kids. Help them get the GED so they can get jobs and get in the system and like everybody else.
Thank you so much. Lloyd Thompson?
I just want to say, follow from Brother Sylvester. I spent 30 years in NAACP before the last 7 years before I came president. Because I had folks like Willie Bradford, Herman Farr, Herschel Brown, Harold Kelly. They taught me the importance of being involved in the NAACP. I'm committed to that. At 50 years old, whoever I can help to learn what we do in the NAACP, to take over, I'm willing to sit down and do whatever I can. Because somebody took enough time to say, Lord, you can do it. But you got to sit here and listen. 30 years before I became president, that's where I was at in the NAACP. Card carrying member.
Thank you, Lloyd. Councilman Willie Bradford.
Thank you, Dominique. Thank you very much. Thank you for the panel. I think the responses on the panel was excellent. Actually exceptionally excellent because they understand. It's a real crisis out here, y'all. We've had great opportunities over the last 50 years, great opportunities. And I'm just going to be candid with you 1 second and say that you're inheriting something that you didn't create, you young people. You heard it? Throughout the course of the 50 years, although we've had great opportunities and we've made great strides, we also have had something that nobody mentioned, and that is called, you've been sold out.
Several times.
Okay. But guess what? We talk about the system, and then I'm gonna get to my point. The system, whatever we have achieved, the progress we have made, the evolution that we have accomplished, came within the system. The system hadn't changed. The system, the racist, white supremacist system that we've had to endure since we arrived here have not changed. We've made some progresses and some legislation and some policy changes as it relates to right to vote, discrimination issues, but as it relates to the system, we are surviving within the system. The problem that we had, and Lord is right. Lord came to us. I didn't go find Lord Thompson. Okay? Lord showed up one day at the end of the office and said, "Listen, I want to help. What can I do?" Okay. Arma Rogers, I didn't go find Arma Rogers. Arma Rogers saw a need in her community. She saw the dilapidation, the despondency, and the hopelessness. So she said, "Listen, let me start an organization. There's no panacea to this. There's no quick-all. There's no fix-all. There's no real thing. What I'm asking you to do and challenging you to do," and Lynn said it earlier, okay, start where you are. Okay, start where you are. The issues that we're facing are so broad and so complex, but start where you are and start there. Lynn is right. Lynn Cawthorn ran for public office, and voting is important. Voting is certainly important. But it's just not voting, it's who you elect. Because you can elect your cousin, and your cousin will do the squat about a $500 million budget. Okay? You can elect somebody who look like us if they're not sensitive to the fact that we are the poorest citizens in a city that we are part of. And they don't seem to be sensitive to that. This is the problem. Over the years, we didn't connect the dots. Black apathy is real. Black voting apathy is real. Okay? When we voting got to mean something to people. We got to show people by voting that it matters. We got to show people that voting and accomplishing something is what motivates me to get other people to go vote. We got to connect dots on voting for the right people, getting people in office, and doing something to show people that, yeah, voting is important, then we can get other people to vote. But this is a good thing. We're a red state. Y'all know we're a red state. Okay. Georgia's a red state. Georgia got Atlanta. We're a red state. We got Shreveport. We got the majority voting populace. We have the opportunity to elect our own people. It would not matter what happens in Louisiana if we was to exercise our right to vote and vote for the right people. Listen, Shreveport is a $500 million industry. The city's budget is $500 million. Y'all know how much $500 million is? I've been to 3 council meetings since I've been elected. Okay? 75% of the things that I've been voting on, 75% is dealing with money. It's about money. Everything evolves around money. So my challenge is that if we vote in the right people, it would not matter what happens in America. It would not matter what happens in Baton Rouge. It would not matter what happens in Louisiana. Because we can control our own destiny. We can control our own destiny by voting and exercising and holding accountable the people that we put in office. But we got to help them get in office. Because, again, somebody said, I think Brother Muhammad said, that you're going to become lawyer or puppet to the people that get you in office. And black people don't like to contribute to political offices. But if we can do that and elect our people, have political wherewithal, have the great influence of our voting power and influence, we can control our destiny. We do not have these subsidies being developed around us like you see some of these other cities. They can't move the boat, they can't move downtown, they can't move southern trade, nor can they move Long Lake. So our tax base is solid. So all we need to do is start where we are. Start working on something. Get involved politically, get involved with associations, get involved with organizations that are doing something and going somewhere. And let's move forward. Let's go forward together. So King said, the night that before he was assassinated, he said, we as a people, he did not say the middle class, he did not say the impoverished, he did not say those that work downtown, he did not say those who work for public jobs. He said, we as a people, we got to move together if we're going to get to the promised land. We can do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Bradford.
I actually wanted to say something really quick based off of a couple of times I've heard the people say we're getting passed on a Shreveport or we're getting passed on a problem that we did not create. But we cannot allow that to deter us from stepping up and making a change. Just because we've been passed on a problem, sometimes we have to be the change that we want to see. And if you've been passed on something that you feel is a problem, there's even more of a reason for you to step up and take the leadership position and make the change.
Thank you, Kristen. We have Ms. Rogers that wanted to say something, and I'm going to take you next at the microphone, sir. Go ahead, ma'am.
I'll try to make this very brief. The young man mentioned, did we lose something and where we lost it? We did lose it in a generation. In the latter 70s, early 80s, we had problems with gangs and drugs. We had children that showed up at school that I had to teach who had fetal alcohol syndrome, those kind of things. So you wound up having a disconnect with that. Early pregnancies was unheard of when I was in school, and I graduated in 1970. But then you started to have pregnancies in middle schools. So that generation is what we lost. We had to have aunts and uncles and grandmothers to help raise these children because the mother was missing. The mother might have been in Houston or somewhere else. So somebody else was raising that child. And when you send those kind of children to school, you have problems. Look up, fetal alcohol syndrome. That's what I had to talk. So that's where we had a problem. Now he mentioned Johnny Vance in the MLK area. Johnny Vance, some other leaders that got out there, eradicated the gangs. We're not having it. They got rid of it. Cooper Road. Okay?
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Sir, your name and your question.
My name is Jake Lucas, and I just want to say that what you see in Shreveport, you see that all over the United States, in the black community. High unemployment, high dropout rate. In every community in the United States, you see the same thing. Some good and some not so good. It's Shreveport. And two of the quietest group of people who's not saying anything is poor people and black men. Black men is not standing up and saying anything. We're all being led by entertainers in our community. We're all being led by movies and athletes. And don't get me wrong, I like movies and I like entertainers. But black people, black men have to get up in the community and start doing what we're supposed to do in the community. And I've been saying this, and I ain't talking about the black men that you see around, the preachers and the politicians. I'm talking about the black men that you see on the golf course and the barbershop. These are the black men that have ideas and for the community, but we're not coming out to the community and talk about it. I'm trying to suggest that black men, if you want to get involved in it, join the NAACP or join any other organization that you can come out and speak. If it's not working the way you want to, form a group. But black men, before we do anything in this community, black men have to stand up. And that's not just here in Shreveport. I'm in Shreveport, so I'm saying it here in Shreveport. Thank you.
I think Darwin Jones from the Caddo Sheriff's Office mentioned this in the last session, that black people are an endangered species. What about black men? Are they considered an endangered species?
Yeah, it's true. I look at the percentage, they say by the year 2050, the percentage of Asian people in America will be 3% plus. White, we have so many. Hispanic going to have so many. Blacks, by the year of 2050, going to be a plus 0.6. So you're losing, you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, I think we'll take this last question, and you want to wrap it up? Okay. Your name and question, sir.
Rudolph Glass. I just have two statements I need to make. One, Mr. Ryan Williams, we worked together at Woodlawn. He had a little junior fraternity and junior sorority for the students. And it was something different, and they enjoyed it. He and I worked together with a few students at school and away from school. And one of the things we realized is that the parents play a big part in whatever goes on with these kids. We only have maybe a few months a year to deal with them. When they go home, Christmas holiday, spring break, every break they have through the summer, they're still in that environment. And we can only do so much, so you have to find a way to get the parents more involved in the education as far as teaching them When we go to voting, I talk to people plenty of times, and they talk about, my grandmother know this guy, he's a member of the church, my cousin know him or her, and they want to vote for him. But what are they doing? You're not doing anything, don't put them in. A lot of times we see situations where you have something happens to a person, they can go talk to someone they know in government, and he helps them. But what about the mass of people who does not know these people? What recourse do you have? So we have to educate the kids on the importance of who you vote for. You go out and vote all day long, but if you're not voting for the right person, it's still not being effective. So that was it.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. I think this wraps up our session for Beyond Selma Call to Action. I want to thank Lynn for having me moderate this, and I also want to thank our panel for a great, healthy discussion. I hope this re-energizes the Shreveport-Bossier area, the Arklatex as a whole, for a call of action. All right, thank you so much.
Let's give Dominique Van a big round of applause for LA. Channel 12, I had a good interview with her yesterday. Thank all the parents for coming out for the invoking conversation, the engaging conversation, what we need in this community.